information about the permits and to provide comments and public commentary. In fact, we were given only 2 minutes each to comment on the flawed permits, and no commissioner asked a single question. The permits were unanimously approved. Now, the number of new OGDPs is increasing rapidly, and we need your help to respond. To help you learn how the permits are written, we've developed this workshop. We provide step-by-step instructions for accessing the COGC website and reviewing the permits. We hope that you'll use what you learned tonight to become part of the solution by submitting comments and testifying before the COGC to stop oil and gas development that hurts people and endangers the environment. Now I'm going to turn it over to Alexis to introduce the speakers for today.
Hi folks, thanks for joining us tonight. And thank you, JoAnn, for that introduction. Our first speaker is Kate Christensen of 350 Colorado, and she is the Oil and Gas Campaign Coordinator. And she will be discussing some of the background around oil and gas drilling permit issues in Colorado.
Hey, I'm just gonna get my screen going. I'll share some slides. I'm having
turned off? No.
I'm having a little bit of imposter syndrome because I see that, you know, we have a lot of people here who know a lot about these this law. So please feel free to jump in if you would like. And I'm having a hard time finding my present button. But regardless, we're going to talk about, oh, it's because it's in edit mode. We're going to talk about SB 181. Just some of the things that changed once, oh gosh, that's fantastic. We're going to talk about some of the things that have changed since SB 181 started. I feel like there's someone else in the slides. Alexis, would you mind sharing my slides for me? It seems like other people were in there editing.
Sure.
That would be great. Thank you so much. So there's a few things that changed. A lot of things that were really important that changed with SB 181. One was that the mission of the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission changed. So it went from fostering oil and gas development to regulating. And we'll talk some more about kind of what all these different things mean a little deeper. We also, it changed the makeup of the COGCC and professionalized it. So it wasn't a group of oil and gas volunteers anymore. It's actually a group of people that are paid pretty handsomely by our tax dollars who are charged with health safety, protecting health safety in the environment, public health safety in the environment. And they make the states, I feel like, okay, I don't know what's going on with the slides.
Oh, can you see the slides?
No, it's like a timer is going on.
Okay.
It makes the states, so much better, thank you. Regulation the floor, not the ceiling, thanks for your help. And then it made public health and safety a priority for the first time. So a little bit deeper into this, if you go to the next slide, please, Alexis, thank you. So public health, safety, and the environment need to be taken into consideration when it comes to oil and gas activity. That's the law now. That is what's supposed to be happening, and that's not what's not happening. We're supposed to be regulating instead of fostering oil and gas development. The state is not required to promote oil and gas development, but instead oil and gas development needs to follow the state's rule. Industry has to follow the rules laid down by the state. Local governments can go beyond what the state requires now. That they didn't used to have to do that. It used to be that the state said this was the maximum protection you can give the citizens. And now local governments say, actually, we're going to do more. And they have been. You can require 2,500 foot setbacks, for example, like Boulder County did. This is a major shift. All these things have been a major shift the past 2 years for staff and officials at the state level, and they need to be hearing from us because they're not shifting. If we go to the next slide. So what's actually happening is not in line with SB 181. I'm not a lawyer, but this is what I'm observing. So SB 181 triggered all these rulemakings, which a lot of people on this call participated in. And the COGCC never stopped permitting wells during this time. They've permitted over 4,000 wells since Polis was elected, and 3,000 wells since SB 181 was signed into law. And most of these wells were permitted on sites that already existed. So now the COGCC has started approving new sites for drilling. And these are oil and gas development plans, the OGDPs, and the Form 2As, which Brad is going to give you a very deep dive into how to comment on these. And so far, it's been just egregious and crazy. They've unanimously approved all the applications despite serious flaws and just a liberal use of exemptions from industry. For example, they approved a permit where they're drilling a new well 500 feet from a home, or like if you're looking at the permits, they're called RBUs, residential building units, rather than honoring the 2,000 foot setback that the COG put into place with their own rules. So it's incredibly frustrating. What's the point of these new regulations if the COGCC is not even going to hold them up? And there's a public commenting process for these rules that it's incredibly cumbersome. The couple of us that have been doing the commenting, we're getting ignored. That's why we need you. So next slide, please. The COGCC staff is just accepting the applicant's responses to public comments and not performing their own checks on the statements. So we can provide information that shows why these permits are totally ridiculous. And the COGCC is like, and the applicant, the industry representative will say, oh no, just ignore them. And that's what COGCC does. And the other thing, the director's recommendations are being issued maybe only days before the commission hearing. I checked yesterday for the OGDP that they're hearing tomorrow, and it still wasn't up yesterday. And it's crazy to think that we should be able to comment if we don't even know what the director's recommendation is. And the application can appear to be unopposed in this considered via consent agenda, which limits our time for consideration. So there's a lot of problems. It's a really kind of Kafka-esque mess, honestly, but there's still power in public comment. And this is an example I wanted to show everybody. If you look in the financial assurances rulemaking, that's the next slide. There are over 300 people who gave individual public comment to say that oil and gas needs to clean up their own mess. This public comment, it's in the record. It's there. And I see in the chat someone saying, can the COGCC be sued? Only if we participate. My understanding, again, not a lawyer, other lawyers on the call chime in, but we can't sue an organization if we don't do public comment. So public comment is incredibly important, because if we are telling them, it's in the public record, that these wells should not be approved and they go ahead and approve them anyway, that's our first step in taking care of business, in my mind. So that's kind of an SB 181 overview. If any of the like people who wrote SB 181 or people who helped pass it want to chime in, feel free. Otherwise, Brad's awesome information is next. Thank you.
Alexis, are you going to go to Brad's information, or do you want me
Brad
to?
will be sharing his screen. I believe, oh, this is JoAnn, your slides. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes. Okay, let me share my screen.
And JoAnn, if I could introduce you really quick. So this is JoAnn Hackos. She's the Evergreen Audubon Conservation Board member, also coming to us from the WBRC. She represents the Audubon Colorado Council and is the chair of the Colorado Sierra Club's Oil and Gas Committee.
Okay, thank you all. Can you, let me see if I can get this to view. Slideshow. There we go. I wanted to just take a few minutes to talk about, let me see, what I need to do is put my video on. There we go. Start video. Wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're worried about. And that includes light and noise pollution, as well as the quality of the air that people are breathing. We can see that light pollution is an absolutely profound problem. And what we're trying to do really is to make people aware that there's a problem involved in this. And one of the things I need to do here is to get rid of this set of pictures of people. Okay, sorry. This shows the bright light and light pollution in the country in sites like produced by well pads, by storage sites, by all kinds of resources that are impossible to regulate. Noise pollution is human-made noise, is a pervasive pollutant and affects environmental quality. It also disrupts a whole series of behaviors that are vital to both people and animal communication. It alters habitats, degrades natural acoustic conditions, and displaces sensitive species. When WBRC looked at this problem, we found that comprehensive life cycle approach to new roles provided a framework for new rules. And all proposed post-drilling operations must be subject to new rules on lighting, seasonal restrictions, and timing to avoid and minimize and mitigate the impact on all stages of development. COGCC, we said it must regulate oil and gas operations and infrastructure in light of a public duty to avoid and minimize adverse impacts on public health, safety, the environment, wildlife, and biological resources, and include in that an interagency coordination in spirit of the new act. We know that bright lights not only affect people, but they affect the biological resources that we depend on to keep our planet healthy. They disrupt the sleep, feeding, reproduction cycle of pollinators. They cause plants to be affected. The number of bees and other pollinators are declining due to diseases, introduced parasites, pesticide, climate change, and all of these. The glare from artificial lights impacts wetlands that are home to fish and other animals, just like frogs and toads. Most well-known light pollution effects are on migratory birds. Bright lights disorient birds, drawing them off course. They fly around bright natural gas flares, unable to navigate away, and lose close to half their body weight in one night. Night foraging creatures like owls, bats, and mice rely on darkness to hunt and provide protection from predators. The permanent full moon effect makes animals more vulnerable And sometimes they adapt by spending less time foraging and not putting on the calories they need to continue. Light pollution creates a permanent full moon. It disrupts feeding, sleeping, and the reproductive life cycle of both human and wildlife. Most well-known light pollution affects migratory birds and night foraging creatures. This is a picture of this full moon effect, the permanent full moon effect over the Permian Basin in West Texas, a place I used to live, and thankfully don't anymore. Oil and gas operations in western Weld County. This is one example of one that it's a mile away from an active bald eagle nest and a communal roost along Boulder Creek. These operations lacked any sound or light controls to mitigate or minimize their impacts. You can see glare. In this case, a photographer was observing a juvenile post-fledging bald eagle when he took this picture. And you can see just how bright it is in the middle of the night. Lighting rules said to protect a human and high priority habitat from artificial light recognize that animal behaviors such as foraging, reproduction, migration need to be protected. Use best practices lighting design to reduce light pollution and minimize impact on wildlife. To study the cumulative effects of artificial light on high priority habitats and consider the recommendations of the AGLC to change the way light pollution is measured. We also know that noise has a huge effect on both people and wildlife. It affects everything: neuroendocrine systems, reproduction, cardiovascular systems, metabolism, all from sustained exposure to noise. Noise can displace birds to already decreasing competition for food. All avian species that we've studied, including the native Colorado birds of the shortgrass prairie, since our lark, like our lark bunting and the western meadowlark, are actively affected by noise pollution. Human health is affected by noise pollution, extensive and continuous noise pollution. It creates a whole host of negative responses, including anger, anxiety, helplessness, distress, exhaustion, and may predict future psychological effects. Sleep disturbance, awakening, and changings in sleep state. Effects that include drowsiness, cognitive impairments, and chronic sleep disturbance. Even low sustained noise has an effect. Cardiovascular health, a positive correlation between chronic noise exposure and elevated high blood pressure, hypertension, and heart disease. Study of oil and gas fields in New Mexico demonstrated acoustic effects on birds and wildlife. And COGCC commissioned in 2017 showed that oil and gas sources regularly exceeded the maximum permissible noise. OGDPs must take into account all the noise associated with a site. Often the predicted noise levels only account for the noise from the drilling operations, as Brad will tell us, and do not include other noises that are already in the environment. COGC rules should include priority habitats in addition to state and local wildlife areas for cumulative oil noise levels. If oil and gas operations result in persistent noise that adversely impacts public welfare, the director should require that the operator take action pursuant to Rule 901A. This rule requires that the operator take action in the noise levels that violate standards to the detriment of human welfare and wildlife and biological resources. Enforcement shouldn't be discretionary. Highest protective standards for noise and lighting in high priority habitats with including human health and welfare, as well as biological resources, strict oversight and enforcement for priority habitats where noise or lighting adversely impact the residents, human population, as well as resident and migratory and other wildlife. Air pollution, we shows that people who live near oil and gas drilling are exposed to harmful pollution and are at risk of asthma, respiratory disease, and even cancer. And I think that's where I'm going to stop. And Alexis, turn it over to you and Brad.
All right, thanks, JoAnn, for that great overview of some of these topics of oil and gas and some of these topics that the public can weigh in about. And so next we have Brad. Brad was a participant in the mission change rulemaking. He comes from the Sierra Club's Oil and Gas Committee, Colorado Native Plant Society, and the Wildlife and Biological Resources Coalition. And he's probably spent more time than anyone since the rulemaking, commenting on oil and gas drilling permits. And so Brad, if you could tell us about how to give input on oil and gas drilling permits.
Let me start the slideshow. So thank you all for being on this call, learning about the ins and outs of commenting on oil and gas development plans. The map shown here from the COGCC website shows the 50,000 wells that have already been drilled in Colorado. And the industry, of course, wants more. As of right now, there are 27 oil and gas development plans waiting for completeness review and the start of public comment. That's that bar over on the far left. There are 6 well pad applications open for public comment right now until the end of the month. There are 11 applications for well pads where comments are closed, and we're waiting for recommendations by staff and then some kind of public hearing by the commissioners. 5 well pad applications have been approved under Senate Bill 181 since January. So there's going to be a lot to look at when they start coming through, so we can use everyone's eyes on these applications. So thank you for wanting to be a part of this process. Because really it's amazing what you can find when you look at the actual documentation. Most all that I've looked at have something questionable, something to hide perhaps, or some attempt to escape by the rules, something which seems wrong. So whatever your interest is, whether it's in natural resources, community protection, human health, wildlife, birds, these oil and gas applications will touch on it somehow. Senate Bill 181 is supposed to protect those human and natural values, and the commissioners and staff need to know that we're watching them to ensure that they do what the law calls for. So it can be fun and rewarding to do this research. But there are lots of steps you have to go through and a lot of dead ends to avoid. So I'll show you how on both counts. But remember, you can cut through the obstacles to commenting and make your voice heard. So in this presentation, after a brief tour of the maps that are available on the COGCC site, I'll talk about the steps you need to take to submit comments. And there are 2 ways to do that. Then we'll go into how to access the application documents and things to look for when researching applications. The main menu of the COGCC webpage is shown. You'll see that permits is circled at the top right. That's where we're going to spend most of our time. But I thought it was interesting to talk just a bit about that blue box. Click here to get COGCC email updates. These are emails that come out once a week, and they show you the new OGDPs that have been filed during the last week. This is the email that I got yesterday, and it shows 9 new OGDPs. So the industry is starting to get ramped up now that the rules are complete. Anyway, back on the main page, let's go to maps and see where the pending locations are located. You have to do this other mouse click on that other red circle. And this opens the maps page on the COGCC site. So you can see the list of layers over on the left side. And if you click the wells layer, you can see the map that I showed at first that showed all of the wells. But we want to look at the pending applications. So we'll go to the left-hand side and click permits and then pending location form 2A. At the time that I did this, there were 2, 4, 6, 7 of them pending. Those are the salmon-colored diamonds. And on the top menu bar is the inspector tool icon. So if you're in that mode and you click on a diamond, you can see the name of the operator and the location name. That's the location name we're going to use when we do the location query on the permits page. So this diamond shows the Kerr-McGee DB Farms pad. The examples I'm going to use come from a different Kerr-McGee pad in the same area called the McGavin pad. Since the McGavin pad is in a suburban area, I'm going to take a moment to talk more about rural areas with wildlife habitat. For that, we go over to the layers again, check parks and wildlife, and then under that, check high priority habitats, and under that, the Rule 1202C, no service occupancy habitats. So this map is from Northwest Colorado. The CPW maps on here are good for the species that Colorado Parks and Wildlife cares about, like big game, raptors, and grouse, but not the rest of the natural resources of the state, which 181 was designed to protect. I'm part of the Biological Resources Working Group, which the commission has started as a result of the mission change rulemaking. And I think that our group will be proposing in January new rulemaking to add other species of greatest conservation need from the state wildlife plan and other species to the rules, but we're not there yet. But that doesn't mean you can't research them and add your comments now as well. For non-CPW species, though, I invite you to go to the Codex site at the CSU's Natural Heritage Program. I'm not going to go into any detail on the Codex website, but I urge anyone interested in the whole range of natural resources to go to Codex and start exploring. The Colorado Natural Heritage Program is the best source of scientific information on thousands of non-game species in our state. Layers include Audubon important bird areas, range maps for threatened and endangered species, and other rare species. So by all means, check out Codex and think about incorporating it into your comments. Let's also look at the map layer, which bears on environmental justice. Here I've selected the layers COGCC, then rules, and then disproportionately impacted communities. The resulting brown and red areas show locations which meet the DI criteria. So if the new well pad is in one of them, special rules exist to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of residents. This is a ripe area for commenters to focus on. From what I've seen so far, the operators are not following the detailed rules required of them to inform those residents and to get their informed consent. So that's a big issue. But let's go back to the COGCC main page and choose permits from the top menu to start the process of submitting comments. So here we've gone into permits in the red circle, and we're going to go to the bottom half of the page for oil and gas location assessments, Form 2A. So if you have talking points and you want to use them as the basis of your comments, or if you want to make text-only comments less than 8,000 characters, that's about 2 2/3 pages. The only way to submit them is through the pending location assessment query on this permits page. So let's run that query for all counties. And when we do, we get this page that has a lot going on. In the comment status column, you see that some cells are orange and some are green. Some might also be red. We generally have about a month to comment on applications once they are complete. So the green shows you've got maybe 2 or 3 weeks to comment. The orange shows you've got about a week or 2, and the red shows that time is starting to run out. There's under a week. Other columns give links to the cumulative impact form, like over here on the right, and to application documents, third column from the left, that has the name of the pad. Then fourth from left, you see the submit comment link. Now, you would think that COGCC could provide an easier way to submit comments, like putting a link right on their homepage. But as we know, that's not how COGCC rolls. So to submit a comment on the McGavin pad, if you click on this link that's circled, you will go to the public comment page. Now there's two buttons circled in red here, attachments and PDF. You would think that you could attach an attachment and submit that. That's not what it does. So ignore those. What you need to do is to hit the make comment button, and you can see here that there's an existing comment on this well pad. But to do your own, you would hit that button, and that brings up this form. So after you fill out your identifying information and the comment which you type in and hit the CAPTCHA, then you can submit your comment. The thing that's limiting about this is if you've researched the application and you've used a Word document, and so you type your comments in Word, you can't use this way of commenting. There's no way to attach a document. So I'll show you next the way to do that. But for most of us and most of the time, this way is how you'll submit comments. So to recap, to submit typed in comments with no document or graphics, go to the home page, choose permits, run the location assessment query, pick the application you want to comment on, hit the submit comments link, make comment button, and then pat yourself on the back for having navigated this mess. But if you want COGCC to have to deal with your magnum opus of comments, your masterpiece of graphics, you have to put on your VCAT, because here we go to ways of commenting part 2. Here you have to pick the hearings item from the main menu and then go into the e-filing system. The e-filing system is the system that COGCC uses for legal documents, notices of hearings or orders from the hearing officer and so forth. So normally most users don't need to deal with it, but it does give a convenient way for individuals or organizations to file real documents. So if we click the e-filing link, we see that there are 2 options they give us here. One down here is called the Public Access Viewer. That's if you've got a document number and want to view that document, that's how you can do it. But if you want to submit comments through this way, you'll have to hit the red circle and apply for access. And that will work. They'll give you access. When you get into the e-filing system, what you need to do is put in the docket number in order to submit comments on that docket. But we haven't seen the docket number yet. So there are a few ways to get that. One is to pull up the Form 2A or the 2B, the cumulative impacts form. And another is to return to the permits page. So let's do that. Here we're going to run the pending applications link in the top half of the screen. And when we do, we see the Kerr-McGee OGDP name. It's called Long's Peak. And then here's the docket number. But you don't want to click on that. You want to copy it. Of course, it'd be easier if you could just comment here, but that's not how they make us, that's not part of the hoops. So if you then go back in and paste it into the e-filing system and say search, you get a record which looks like it's the right record. So if you click that, you get the official legal page for that docket. So to file our document of comments, we go to the circled option labeled file a public comment for this application, circled in red. You browse for the file on your computer, put in either your name or your organization's name, hit import down at lower right. And your comment is taken in by the system, and the commissioners and staff will have to deal with it now. So for the next half of the presentation, we'll go into how to actually do research on these applications. So for that, we go back to the permits page. We run the pending oil and gas location assessment query again, and we come back to this page. Here we will want to click on the documents link, that bold item here, and the third column over. Since we're interested in the McGavin pad, we click that, and we get the list of documents that are associated with this application. But there are some issues here, some roadblocks, which COGCC has put up, and it took me a long time to figure these out. So circle you see a 1 as if it's page 1 of 2 or more, but you don't see a page 2. And there's no next button, there's no back button. This took me a long time to figure out. What you can't see is that there actually is a 2 next to the 1, but the color is in such light blue that you could never see it. So half of the documents that you're going to look for, you might never find. It's nuts. But now that we know what they're there, it's the way seems straightforward now that we can just hit the document download link, and our document should appear. But what we actually get, at least if you're using Firefox on Windows, as I am, an error message, and you get a download that fails. So I've tried to download the Form 2A here, since that's a foundational document for the application. Staff has been told about this error numerous times, but they don't seem to care to fix it. The workaround is to use a browser like Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome. But even if you use Microsoft Edge, you might not be able to make that work because here, the first time you use Edge, it throws an error as well. The next time it works. It works the second time. So here it is, the Form 2A. Now we can start to research this application in earnest. For some reason, I seem to be going back. So going back to the first page of results, let's look at this page in more detail. You can see that there are various plans listed. The noise mitigation plan, odor mitigation plan, light mitigation. There's also drawings, the location drawing, the access roadmap, and the layout drawing. There are also other documents named Other, not a very informative title. One other document that I've seen was the agreement between Kerr-McGee and the town of Firestone. It seemed to be a substantial thing to know about, but staff has not made it easy for us to locate these things by calling them Other. So from what I've seen, here are my list of MustSee documents. You've got the Form 2A. That's the basic well pad information, including the alternative location and analysis and operator proposed best management practices. There's the Form 2B with cumulative impacts, the location drawing, access roadmap, layout drawing, the various plans, including water plan, wildlife mitigation plan, and the community outreach plan. We've also put together an OGDP toolkit, which lists the various plans, their descriptions, and the circumstances in which they may or may not apply. So here on the Form 2A, page 1, shows you that it's a new location, that top circle. You see the docket number, the financial assurance bond number, and in this case, the well pad at name and number. So these are all key identifying information. Here on page 2, we learned that the pad is in the town of Firestone and that the local permitting of the application started when they had filed this Form 2A. Of course, that might have been several months back. To learn more about the site, if you scroll down to page 6, you see that the nearest house is 763 feet from the well pad to the north. The property line is 144 feet to the west. That can affect the setback requirements that the operator needs to meet. We also see that there are 86 homes, 82 homes, RBUs, residential building units, from 1,000 to 2,000 feet away. That the pad will disturb 26 acres, and that oil-based drilling mud will be used, which affects odor. So if we go back up to page 3 of the Form 2A, we come to the important section called Alternative Location Analysis. As part of the mission change rulemaking, the commission decided that under certain circumstances, the applicant has to submit alternative locations for the well pad because they're near sensitive receptors. Like in this case, under 2,000 feet from homes or apartment buildings, and immediately within an gradient from a wetland or riparian corridor. Being in a disproportionately impacted community will trigger this as well, as will other items you see there in the red circle. So the next part, page 4 of the Form 2A, is called the Alternative Locations Dashboard. So this shows a summary of the issues with the alternative locations, which the operator says they looked at. So you can see that option 1 is within 2,000 feet of 166 homes. Option 2 is within 2,000 feet of 667 homes and less than 2,000 feet from a child care center. And option 4 is within, has 208 homes within 2,000 feet. So this is a pad that's going in a highly developed residential area, as you'll see. So from this, it seems like option 3 there are only 2 homes within 2,000 feet. So that might start to thinking, then why isn't the operator going for option 3 instead of where they want it? So to dig deeper into this issue, let's go back to the permits page and pull up the 2 documents that pertain to ALAs, the data sheet and the narrative summary. When we do, and we start to read the narrative summary, we see that they talk a lot about high risk subsidence area. And they seem to be proud that they've put the topsoil storage in an area of high risk subsidence, not the actual well pad. The well pad is 30, 40, 50 feet away. We see here that option location 3 was rejected because they preferred to avoid the high risk subsidence area. So in order to see what the nature of that high risk subsidence is, you can go to the layout drawing, which shows the layout of the actual well pad. And here we see that there's a coal mine boundary and coal mine offset showing on the layout drawing. So they put this pad, it appears, on top of an underground coal mine. I haven't gone back to verify this, but not sure how it looks. So the commission should certainly know about this. And I'm not sure that staff will call it to their attention if commenters like we don't do the work for them. Sad but true. So here we see the location drawing. And this really is a neat document. You can see there barely that there's a red dotted line where the arrows point to. It's hard to see. But that's the buffer for most homes to trigger activities by the mitigating circumstances. You see the well pad with 26 wells. You see these red boxes marked as number 10. Those are the homes in this area. The area with the cross hatching is a floodplain. And there are 18 existing oil and gas wells on this map. So it just seems like from the homes, the floodplain, the subsidence risk areas, why are we even considering this site? Issues that, as JoAnn said, you might want to look at as well as the light and noise mitigation plans. So here's some interesting stuff from their noise plan. The consultant evidently went out and measured the existing ambient background levels of noise and found that it already exceeds the maximum permissible limits established by COGCC. So Kerr-McGee needs to mitigate the noise. In order to do that, they proposed erecting 2,600 feet of 32-foot high sound walls. As I'm sure a lot of you know, it's a standard technique that the operators have started using. So the consultants then modeled the noise with the sound wall in place and concluded that they're predicted to comply with the allowable standards. Well, that sounds good until you read further in the document, as I've underlined at the bottom, that the predicted noise levels represent only the contribution of the drilling operations and do not include ambient noise or noise from other facilities. So in other words, they presented no evidence that in the real world, Kerr-McGee is going to be able to meet the noise levels. But they pass it off as, oh yes, we are going to comply. Sometimes the permits get kind of absurd. This is an excerpt from Kerr-McGee's odor plan that I just love. With noise and lights, odors are, of course, one of the major problems for people who live near pads. The odors cause headaches, sore throats, and other symptoms. But not to worry, Kerr-McGee is on the problem by adding essential oils to the drilling fluids. Kerr-McGee assures COGCC that the essential oil scent and quantity were carefully selected by an unaffiliated third-party vendor. But we're not told who that vendor is, what the essential oil is, or if it's worked in other locations. No mention if patchouli is an option for the essential oil either. So we found yet another say what point in this application. And now for another fatal flaw, let's look at the water usage and water sources. This information is found in both the water form and the cumulative impact form 2B. This is pulled from the form 2B. As we know, fracking uses an extreme amount of water, fresh water. And the commission is interested in trying to get operators to use recycled water as much as possible. Unfortunately, here, Kerr-McGee is proposing to use 5.5 million barrels of fresh water. That's over 200 million gallons of water. And only 0.5% of total water usage will be recycled water. So all of the water is going to be fresh. It's going to be destroyed in the process. It'll be contaminated. And during a time when we as a state are about to face a call under the Colorado River Compact, fresh water is a vital interest to us all. The commission also required that the applicant list their sources of water and the coordinates of the location that water will be drawn from. In this excerpt from their water plan, Kerr-McGee shows their intent not to disclose any of this information to the commission. This is in blatant disregard for the commission's rules and should lead to the denial of the application. We do not yet know what COGC staff or commissioners will say about this particular dodge. But water plans seem to be a weak spot in all of these applications. So please pay attention to water when you'll be viewing permits. And it gets so absurd that one applicant in the town of LaSalle, for example, is proposing using a flexible water pipe, 1.5 miles long from the South Platte River that will go under, I guess, a railroad and a US highway to get to the pad. It seems like that might be a problem. As a final thing, I would just like to spend a few moments talking about the cumulative impacts form, since there's lots of good information there. On page 1 of the 2B, you can see how long construction and drilling will last. 21 weeks, they say, for all 26 wells. You see the land use within a mile. And this is an interesting site since it's near the Firestone Trail. That's only 360 feet from the well pad. So that's an issue, it seems. And on this page, also, you can see there's a whole section on air resource impacts, which I don't know enough to comment on, but maybe one of you do. And on page 7, we see the number of existing wells within 1 mile. And there are 58 active wells within a mile of this well pad. It's interesting to me that Parks and Wildlife, if you're in a high priority habitat area and you have more than one well, one pad in a mile from the pad, you have to go through all kinds of hoops. Here we've got 58 wells within a mile of the pad, and there's no special rules. So it almost seems like people are valued less than wildlife. One last thing that I'm, during the rule making, the commissioners talked about areas of their concern. So these are areas to look at as well when you're commenting. New well pads, are they connected from start to collection and distribution systems? So initial production isn't being trucked or flared. As I said, they seem to be interested in using recycled water as much as possible. They were concerned about truck traffic, each of which the 2 above points can make worse. They want operators to use electric instead of diesel motors for drills and compressors. And they said in their rules that they're concerned that disproportionately affected community members are given timely, accurate information in their native language, and that they give informed consent and have a public meeting if they want one. As I've said, there's, I think, been one application that's been in a DI, that one up at LaSalle, where the flexible pipe is coming from the South Platte River. They have not acted on that yet, but I would be surprised if they don't tell the operator, yes, everything you've done is fine, even though from what I've seen, they have not followed the language of the rules. So the end of business as usual starts with ensuring that no application slips between the cracks. As the number of applications ramps up in the months ahead, we need your eyes on these permits and your comments on the record. Feel free to contact me at brad@bradk.org, just the letter K, for further help on these topics. There's a lot that I still don't know as well, so we can figure it out together. That ends my presentation. Sorry for the information overload, but the slides will be available after the webinar. So I wish you all happy sleuthing.
All right, thanks, Brad. Really appreciate the overview of the research that you do to see what kind of input and what kind of commentary can go into oil and gas drilling plans applications. And so up next, we have Katessia Robertson. She's an intern with 350 Colorado and a student at the Graduate School of Social Work at the University of Denver. And she'll be walking us through a toolkit that she created toward helping us in creating and submitting comments.
Yes, thank you, Alexis, and thank you, Brad, for all that information. Hopefully everyone wasn't too overwhelmed, but this toolkit kind of was meant to be created to make it more simple for everyone. So we wanted to make it as a resource to explain the process for commenting on these permits, and also make it simple by including links, screenshots, and everything, so you don't have to actually remember all the information. You can just use it as a resource because we know it's a lot. So sorry, I just clicked on it. We'll see if it actually opens up. So I'm just gonna scroll through so you all can see, just see the toolkit, and I'll kind of run through everything that it has, and then I'll send the link in the chat after the webinar is over so you all can have it as well. Yeah, so it just starts by outlining what the COGCC is, stating what their mission is, and then move on to what does this have to do with us, and that goes into public commenting. So, sorry, I'm really nervous. And then we just let you know what the difference is between OGDPs and Form 2As. And the biggest difference is the OGDP applications do not have a space for public comment, and the Form 2As do have a space for public comment. Then as you scroll down, you'll see these steps for public comment right here. And then if you need screenshots as well, I have that included here. And all the way at the bottom, we just have some things that you want to look for on the 2A forms, just so that you can put everything in your public comment that you want to mention. And then, yeah, that's basically everything. I'll send the link in the chat so you all have this, and hopefully it makes it simple for you in the public comment process, and you can send it to anyone that has the link can view the toolkit.
All right, thanks, Katessia. Really appreciate you putting that together, and I'm looking forward to going through it to help with creating comment. So yeah, that was a lot of information. So what am I going to do with all that information? While discussing about how we're going to be taking action with all of this. So this webinar is functioning as a springboard for all of the information for the formation of an oil and gas permits vigilante group. And so you might remember including your zip code while registering for this webinar. And that's because we'll be following up with you to notify you when oil and gas drilling permits are being considered for a location scenario. And please feel free if you don't want to receive those notifications, but the intention is that we'll be providing you with talking points gleaned from experts' research on those specific oil and gas permits to help you prepare to comment to the COGCC. And you won't be alone. We'll be there with you every step of the way to support you being empowered to weigh in on those issues impacting your area of residence. So folks, including Brad, do a lot of research as he walked through with us. And we have that benefit of information to have that be distilled into key points toward use in comments. So some upcoming opportunities to give comment. In Firestone, Colorado, operator Kara McGee, Kermit, what's Kermit the Frog got to do with this? No, this is Kermit McGee. This is an operator intending to drill in the Firestone area. And so we'll be reaching out to you with some consolidated talking points about why this drilling plan is problematic. So it's crucial for grassroots and community members to engage about and object to oil and gas drilling permits. So these permits don't go without opposition. And so, yeah, thanks for joining this webinar. That's the intention, is following up with you, just notifying you of when those opportunities for comment come in. That way we can organize around giving comment on these specific permits as they come up. So yeah, looking forward to finding power in our community groups, our community members, and engaging around these permits that are being considered, which just don't get enough information, because as Brad showed you, they are oftentimes buried within this website. And so yeah, really appreciate that walkthrough of it. And so now we're going to go into our Q&A session. And thanks, I see a lot of folks have been engaging in this comment chat box too, as questions are coming up. So please let me know if there's anything that needs further clarification, or like to open it up too for new questions as well, if anyone has anything that they just want to revisit or get further clarification on.
I see, Alexis, that we had a question about, do you have to live in the region in order to make a comment? And as Andrew said, no, you don't. But if you do, your comment is considered much more seriously if you're a local resident. So that is important, and it's worthwhile looking out for things that might be coming in the area that you live in. Obviously, you want to know if they're planning on 28 new wells.
Yes, thanks, JoAnn, for that that answer. And I'll just tag on, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it always helps to give comment. There's collective power in numbers. That way the COGCC knows that folks are paying attention to and care about the issue. If there's someone who's commenting who's local to that area, they're given consideration as being an impacted Coloradan, or I'm not sure if that's the term, but they do review it with more special concern. And then I see some
One
questions.
of the things that I think there's a question that Gabrielle has asked about all of these pieces. We have asked, and I know Brad has in his communications with him, that there should be one document with everything in it rather than multiple documents that we have to deal with, and we haven't gotten any response from that. Brad, you want to say more to that?
No, I guess that was one part that I skipped over. But yeah, I mean, it just makes no sense to me why they can't take all of the documents, zip them together, and say, here is the complete file. Because I've seen lots of instances where one plan will contradict the Form 2A or the 2B. And it's hard to see if you've got 38 separate documents. Whereas if it was all in one document, it might jump out at you better.
I think Brent has a really interesting comment that, yes, we know it's really complicated. But he says, I would encourage you not to give up and maybe just comment on one thing that you've seen. And that's something you could write into the comments form, you know, if it's under 8,000 characters. And, you know, just do, you know, simple comments about something that you're really worried about, like using, you know, 99% fresh water when we have a fresh water shortage in the state. Those are things that can add up when we have enough people commenting on them.
Yes, just wanted to add, so Brad was awesome and just kind of showing us the nitty gritty, like the parts of the things that he goes through to see and kind of suss out what's wrong with the permits. But yeah, Brad, I'd like to say that we'd like to benefit from your kind of consolidating some of these talking points and sharing those with us. That way it's accessible and can definitely weigh in on some of those kind of general or very specific as you want kinds of input.
Sally has a question that says that do we have any examples where a permit has been denied because of comments? And no.
No, they denied no permits. You know, it is interesting though that after they passed the first two, actually the Chairman Robbins seemed to be very motivated to issue that public statement saying how great the process was and how thorough the review was, which was not the case. JoAnn had said earlier, there was a pad over by Rifle that affected plants that are the BLM species of special concern, Harrington's penstemon. And I just in a 30-minute Google search was able to find information that disproved what the operator was saying. I mentioned it at the public comments and it got ignored. So there's power in numbers. And if it's just me or JoAnn or Kate saying things, we're easy to ignore. But if we've got 30 people saying the same thing, I think it's more effective. Since then, staff has not issued any new recommendations. So it'll be interesting to see if they start to take our comments more seriously than they have in the past. They have not to date, but the jury's still out on that. They have 14 or 15 directors' recommendations that we haven't seen yet.
Well, to Sally's question, so comments are just a part of a multi-layered campaign to try to get permits denied. I believe, was it said earlier that if there's comments, then there might be basis to sue afterward, or is that comments kind of open another door for further engagement then?
Yeah, that's my understanding, is that providing public comment like builds the public record. So if there are lawsuits in the future, they can pull from the public record that we've built. And that's the start of a foundation. If we don't participate in the process, which sometimes I don't want to, like this is what gets me through. Sometimes I'm just like, they're making it so hard for us. I don't even want to legitimize this, but we have to participate because we can't sue them later. And it's my understanding.
Thanks, Kate, for that clarification of how comments kind of open a door for further engagement on these permits. Let's see, going through the chat for questions now. Trying to maximize the screen. Someone by,
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. I just see Sue point out that maybe we need to push our legislature to do more to rein the COGCC, and that could be you know, when the legislative session starts the next year, something we could think about. So
we have a raised hand from Brent.
Yeah, I was just gonna, it's like a kind of a comment suggestion for the vigilante citizens group that might try to comment on these permits. A simple document that maybe like an Excel style document that maybe lists, like, if someone finds a permit that has something that's easily objectionable, that you can put the docket number and like what is objectionable, say like, here's a docket number, RBUs within 1,000 feet. And then I can see that and then know like, oh, I can go and write a quick comment about that, like not having to do the research step if someone has already done the research. But I didn't know if something like that was in place or would be in place.
Yes, thanks, Brent, for raising that and kind of telling us too what you think would be helpful toward this. That is going to be a follow-up for our group, is having that resource where it's a spreadsheet that's updated every 2 weeks with information about upcoming permits with their opportunities for comment. And yeah, this is also interactive. Please feel free to let us know any other information that you think that would be helpful in that. But that is our intention, to have such a resource available.
Any other comments or questions? I think everyone's feeling overwhelmed, but I think it's worthwhile. It's interesting. You learn a lot, and I think we can make a difference.
I agree. Go team. We got this. They designed a system that they don't want us to participate in, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yep. And we're going to make this recording of this session available to everyone who has contributed. And we're happy to have you share it with other people. We had a number of people who couldn't come to the presentation, but we'll share the recording with them. So I think we'll have more people involved. And if anyone would be interested in joining the Sierra Club Oil and Gas Committee, as we continue working on these issues, we would really be happy to add you to our volunteer list.
All right, well, yeah, thank you, everyone.
And Alexis, if people want to sign up for the committee, where do they go?
Sure, I'm putting my email into the chat, and please feel free to reach out to me there. And yeah, really appreciate everyone coming tonight and giving your time to learn more about oil and gas drilling plans and how to comment on them. Really looking forward to building this movement with you all and your attention here tonight. And we'll look forward to following up with the links and recording to the Katessia's toolkit. And yeah, we'll be in touch. Really appreciate you all.
Very good. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Great job, you guys.
Thanks, Gabrielle.